Hello, everyone. My name is Kathryn Corden, and I am a sophomore majoring in CSD. When I was granted the freedom to choose my own topic, I immediately recalled a lesson from week 12, where I learned about the three main types of phonological processes. So without further ado, here is my presentation on phonological processes. First off, I wanted to provide the definition to phonological processes before jumping into this PowerPoint presentation. According to the Fundamentals of Phonetics textbook, phonological processes refer to simplifications used by children not capable of producing adult speech patterns. There are three different types of phonological processes: the syllable structure process, the substitution process, and the assimilatory process. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to go in depth and provide examples for each of these. So syllable structure processes is the phonological process that generally simplifies the production of syllables, creating a consonant vowel pattern. And it's made up of four different parts, as you can see below. The first one I want to talk about today is reduplication. Reduplication is the repetition of syllables in words. The second one is final consonant deletion. This is the omission of the final consonant of a word. This is generally suppressed in children with typically developing speech by the age of 3. The third part is called weak syllable deletion. This is the omission of unstressed syllables in words with 2 or more syllables. The deletion can occur before or after the stressed syllable. And this is generally suppressed in children with typically developing speech by the age of 4. Finally, there is cluster reduction. Cluster reduction refers to the deletion of one consonant from a cluster of 2 or more consonants, or the deletion of one of 2 consonants from a cluster of 3 consonants. No, it's a lot, but that tends to delete later developing sounds such as L and R. This is also generally suppressed in children with typically developing speech by the age of 4. So on this slide, I will be providing some examples for each of the different parts of the syllable structure process. So for reduplication, here we have the word daddy going to dada. Here you can see that there is repetition of the first syllable of the word daddy going from dada. Next, we have final consonant deletion. We go from mat to ma. And here you can tell that the final consonant, in this case T, is omitted in the speech. Next, we have weak syllable deletion. And I provided an example of the word before going to for. Now here, the B in before is unstressed, therefore it is omitted. And then our last example for cluster reduction, we go from drum to dumb. And here you can see the deletion of the consonant R. So these are just a few examples, and there will be more to come. So now we're on to the second type of phonological process, which is known as the substitution process. Substitution processes are the phonological processes involving the substitution of one phoneme class by another. And there are actually 5 different parts to this. So the first one is fronting, and fronting is where the velar and palatal consonants become more anterior or toward the front. Generally, this is suppressed in children with typically developing speech by the ages between 2 years and 6 months and 3 years of age. Next is stopping, and with stopping, we replace a fricative with a stop. And this is generally suppressed in children with typically developing speech by the age of 4 or 5. Next, we have gliding, which replaces phonemes with glides. Pretty simple. It's used as a substitute for other phonemes, such as liquid replacing phonemes, and their later developing sounds. Next, we have vocalization, which replaces R and L sounds with other phonemes. This is suppressed around the same time as gliding. And then last but not least, in deaffrication, affricates are replaced with palatal fricatives. Now I'm going to go over some examples of the different types of the substitution process. So as you can see here, for fronting, I provided the word song that goes to son, stopping, which goes from C to T, gliding, rock to walk, vocalization, little to widow, deaffrication, I provided the word chin, and this could honestly go from either shin or sin. So now we're at the final type of the phonological process that I'll be discussing is the assimilatory process. And this refers to the phonological processes that involve an alteration in the phoneme production due to the phonetic environment. And all of my information for this type was found solely in the textbook because we didn't cover it in the slides. But I found that there are 4 different types to the assimilatory process. The first one I want to talk about today is labial assimilation. And this occurs when a non-labial phoneme is produced with the labial place of articulation. This is usually due to the presence of a labial phoneme elsewhere in a word. And then we have alveolar assimilation, which occurs when a non-alveolar phoneme is produced with an alveolar place of articulation due to the presence of an alveolar phoneme elsewhere in the word. Then we have velar assimilation, which occurs when a non-velar phoneme is produced with the velar place of articulation, also due to the presence of a velar phoneme elsewhere in the word. I know these definitions are similar. And then last but not least, we have voicing assimilation. And I learned that there are actually 2 types of voicing assimilation. The first type is prevocalic voicing, which involves voicing of a normally unvoiced consonant. This occurs when the consonant precedes the nucleus of a syllable. That is, the unvoiced consonant assimilates to the voiced nucleus. Another type of voicing assimilation, which is the second one I was talking about earlier, involves the devoicing of the syllable final voiced phonemes that either precede a pause or silence between words or occur at the end of an utterance. And now here I'm providing some examples of assimilatory processes, which breaks down each of the subtypes. For labial assimilation, we have the word book, and that goes to boop, kind of, or boop. It's hard to pronounce, I don't know, but I provided the correct transcriptions below so you could pronounce it on your own. Time goes to tine. Velar assimilation is next, and I provided cup, which kind of goes to cuck. And voicing assimilation for prevocalic, we have pig to pig and bad to bat. So hopefully those transcriptions will help if I'm not pronouncing them the same way you would. So now I have a few questions for those watching the presentation to answer. I've split up the different types of phonological processes. However, now it's up to you to identify the example provided with this specific type, depending on the category. And you can pause the video so you have enough time to write these down, but I will provide the answers in the next slide. So these are the correct answers. We have weak syllable deletion, deaffrication, and labial assimilation. Now for this slide, I wanted to explore some outside or external sources, and I found some fun facts that I wanted to include in my presentation today. So the first one is, while learning to coordinate with the tongue, lips, jaw, teeth, and palate to make speech sounds, all children will actually display speech sound errors. And it's arguably more surprising to see a 2-year-old with perfect adult speech than it would be to see a 2-year-old with sound errors. And this is my last fun fact, that children with phonological disorders may have tantrums displaying crying, screaming, sighing loudly, stomping, or throwing objects. Sorry, it's very windy outside. They may also display aggressive behavior such as biting, hitting, pulling, and shoving. That concludes my presentation today. My sources are listed here. I received some of my information from the lecture video from week 12, as well as our textbook, Fundamentals of Phonetics. And then my external source was from the Exceptional Speech Therapy website. So I really appreciate you for listening and have a good day. I hope you learned something about phonological processes. Thank you.